Welcome to the Channeling Spirit Virtual Summit, a platform where we have invited Spirit to share messages, healings, and transmissions with all of us. May this energetic experience help us to expand our awareness and to deepen the relationship we have with our higher self, our spiritual team, and with Source, however we define them. Thank you for being here and for taking part in this amazing journey. So welcome to the Channeling Spirit Virtual Summit Season 3 bonus session. And so this is a session really designed as a way of kind of gratitude for all of you that have contributed throughout the season. It is only available to you guys. It is available only in the platform itself. These recordings are not made available in the YouTube or in the podcast. So this is really something that's really designed for you guys. And so in today's conversation, we have Kitty and Sandra, both of which you will have met in earlier seasons. They are going to be returning for season 4, which is really exciting. Sandra was supposed to be part of season 3, but schedule conflicts arose, and so she's part of season 3 on the back end, which is kind of exciting. And so welcome, guys. As always, these conversations are completely up in the air. I have no idea where we're going to be going and what's going to be coming up, but I'm so grateful that you guys have decided to join me for this conversation. And we'll just kind of go from there. So why don't we start by kind of having you guys introduce yourselves a little bit, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
So you want me to go first? Okay, because it's very interesting, guys. I'm truly feeling this energy of this. I'm Kitty Butoeg Foss. I am the co-owner of Intuition of the Soul, which is a kind of educational platform. I myself am a storytelling astrologer, have the title thanks to Sandra Pelley, who, in my reluctance, in my awakening, just wouldn't do something. And finally, she's like, just call yourself one. I actually teach a class in astrology called Optimize Your Energy, where we teach people how to read their charts. And that's my form of channeling. Is I look at the stars, I read the chart, but spirits are always talking to me during that. And I've actually just begun now doing daily updates that are really kind of fine-tuning some of that channeling. It's been pretty interesting.
I love that. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandra Pelley, the Sandini Inner Peace Mentor, confidence coach, and visionary of the Guide Academy. And I am so multifaceted. It's unbelievable. But I truly step into my life being open with no expectations, no limitations, of being okay with the outcome. And because of that, I cater to 2 groups of people, those, all of them being spiritual, all of them wanting to connect with their guides. But one group is discovering how to do that. And the other group is really deeply ensconced in how, like they've already know how, but we're digging deeper into what that means for their life, living their life. So in a nutshell, that's who I am and what I do.
Beautiful. And this is something that's really relevant for all of us, because we're all at different stages of our development. And I was just having a conversation with members of my community before this call, and we were talking about how there is no right way, there is no right path, and what's relevant for me won't be relevant for someone else, because we are playing in different spaces. We're at different stages of our development. We're exploring different aspects of what's the word I'm looking for? We're playing in different levels of consciousness. And because we are playing in different levels of consciousness, what's going to resonate for me is going to be different than what resonates for Sandra or Kitty or anyone else. And being in a different level of consciousness is not better or good compared to another one. All it is just a different experience.
Yeah.
And so we were having a conversation about that. So Kitty, before we get any further, I'm curious, you said that you're doing daily messages or updates or astrology readings, or what exactly is that?
So on Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, and TikTok, I read whatever the daily aspects are, and I help. I interpret them. What the concentration is. Like today, there is a real push with spirit to be a little introspective and look at your own structures, because the way the stars are talking today, they're not talking necessarily in big communication. They're talking very personal communication about your structures. And so that was the word I got this morning when I woke up and meditated, was introspection with spirit. So, and as I was taping them today, they had me add a hashtag in TikTok. So I'm like, and I had never heard of the hashtag, but there it was when I went to look for it. So it was like, okay, I'm adding it. So
beautiful. I'm looking forward to listening to those and getting them. So I'll have to.
If you go to either my page, Intuition of the Soul, and just like them, they'll start happening for you. So I'm trying to do it daily. They're only a minute long, folks. So
beautiful.
They're not a big commitment of the day, but that's exactly what Spirit kind of said, is I tell you the story, and this is the story for today. So it's beautiful for the paradigm. Yeah.
And so on your website, if I like them, I will get email notifications, because I play in the email space. I know both of you don't, but I still live in kind of, I like getting the email notifications of things and reminders and things.
I have not set that up yet, because it's been interesting. Funny you should say that, because we just had a big conversation with a group of us about we're narrowing our emails down because we're getting so much stuff. You'd have to do it on Facebook or on TikTok, either under my name or under Intuition of the Soul. Or Instagram, either the two. Instagram does send updates. So if you go to Intuition of the Soul or Optimize Your Energy, you'll be able to like them. I'll send it to you.
Beautiful. Appreciate that.
Okay. I want to piggyback on that a little bit. First of all, for those of us who have businesses and email set up, it tends to be that we're really not focused, but we really know what we want to get out in emails. And sometimes sending out something like what you're asking, Daniel, like little reminder things, we have to be very conscious of what we're doing, because each email that goes out costs us something, physically costs us financially, right? So understanding where that dynamics is. The use of, I love that the Kitty's on TikTok. It's something that I'd love to explore. I know I've been doing Reels on Instagram, and there's definitely a mentor that I follow that I would love to learn how she does hers, because it's really fantastic. Having said that, one of my mantras is the I am love mantra, and I'm on day 150 today of putting that mantra on a reel and putting it out on my Instagram. And that just I know it's just so incredible to me, because for one, I've set myself the goal of doing this for 365 days of this year, is making sure that reel is out there, a different reel every day, different scenery, different things, and just letting people know that this I am love mantra is out there. And it's even, 1 minute for kitties and 30 seconds to listen to mine, usually in most cases. 37 seconds, I think, is mine. And it's just enough that you're getting the information, you're connecting in. It's very powerful.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting going across platforms too, because you can't do one, or if you do, looking at the word monetize on, if you're trying to hit that, I'm not yet. The Facebook did a promotion for the season. And if the problem is, if you upload and download from each platform, they don't count because they get a watermark. So it's an interesting thing to learn about all of these, but it is amazing the reach that they get.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
So
I want to shift gears here, just if you guys don't mind.
Go for it.
He was saying he was feeling the waves. I know that we both came in and we're both really bubbly, and the guys have just been incredible today already in their bubbliness. And David, I was going to call you David, Daniel. David in another lifetime, right?
It's one of those things. David is one of those things that has been utilized for me on a number of different occasions throughout my life. Like I'll even have people write down David Martinez when I register for things, even though I registered as Daniel Martinez, my name tag will be David Martinez. I've even had that happen a couple of times. So
I
you're
get
not the
Shelley
first
Pelley.
person.
You said something about the different levels of consciousness. And I know for myself, and I think this might be part of why my guides or the guides that are around me are just so bubbly, is probably about a month ago, I kind of stepped into the energy of wanting to move past the human concept of what things look like in my spiritual existence. And what that means is that if I like today in the pineal chakra, a crystal came in, and for myself it was a rose quartz. And instead of looking at the crystal, like feeling the energy and seeing the crystal, I actually went inside the crystal and could feel the layers, etc. So I moved past that human concept of what this exterior looked like, and actually was in the bubbles or in the however the makeup of it is. And that's what I'm really enjoying the experience of right now, is that moving past this human concept and wanting to be the light being and experience things in a different way, meaning experience what I'm bringing through in channeling, guided meditations, how I'm healing, all these different aspects of my spiritual life. It's really fascinating. Did you get that?
I did. I'm a little distracted because, at least on my end, just from a technical standpoint, the system is editing your audio, so your S's aren't showing up when you're speaking, like the S's and the sibilants in your speech is being reduced to the point where they're disappearing.
Okay, let me change my audio.
And so I'm trying to see if there's something on my end.
No, I've got a couple different settings. I'll just change my S's and change my sound. And how does that
sounds good
sound? Way
now.
better?
That sounds much better. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So excellent.
It's kind of fascinating to me, though, Sandra, what you said, because I'm at a place that in order to be this bridge and help people look at their stories, I'm really working on accepting my humanness and living it in the divine sense. Because I do believe we are a divine spiritual being with a divine body experience when we tap into it. And so really trying to move into where I am, and knowing that somehow when I am lining up with where I am so able to tap into all these other realms. But when my physicalness or my humanness I'm questioning, that's when I hit, and that's part of my journey. Is in this lifetime, looking at what I know about my chart was, yes, I'm here to transform and do all these things, but I am here also to move on beyond this suffering consciousness that human beings have been in for so long, and that we don't separate. It is about, there's a reason we have evolved to be where we are, and learning about that human piece of us, whether you want to call it ego, whatever you want to call it, it really is the mind. It is who you are, and the more I work with channeling and bringing together for me, and like you said, this is what Daniel was saying, the more I'm able then to see them combining and see versus being caught between, is this kind of thought? No, this is I'm becoming much more symbiotic with myself. And it's and it makes the ability to access joy and my faith easier. There's the word, easy, versus, that feeling of self. It's been a long time coming. So
I love the word that you used, and I use it a lot to talk about how our spiritual self is in a symbiotic relationship with our human self.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tend to use that word a lot. For me, it's always been the idea of balance always comes to mind. And balance for me is something that's been very important for me as a guiding force as I develop and progress and do different things in my life. I'm always looking for balance, not one extreme or the other, and being aware of both sides of the conversation, but being in a neutral, balanced space in relation to whatever it is that I'm playing with. And for me, that aspect of recognizing my humanity and my spirituality as a symbiotic relationship is a big part of that.
Yeah, and I love, Sandra, that you talked about I love your term of I'm stepping into, because it's that awareness of, oh, this is my next step in my journey. I'm stepping into it. And, I use your mantra all the time. It's sitting right here. Here's her little card. It's a little worn. It's got, candle wax on it. It's everything. But I am open also as I step into all of these pieces, no limitations, no expectations, and I'm happy with the outcome. But my favorite, and Sandra knows this, is, and it's tweaked for me, is I am the person my soul sees me as being. Love that one. So when I'm feeling kind of, no, this is the person I am, what my soul sees, and then having that conversation with my soul.
Yeah.
So that's by far one of those things when I'm feeling, I say that I am the person my soul sees me as being. Like, okay, let's go there. So
may I ask a favor of one of you? For the purpose of myself and others, could you explain what the word symbiotic means? Because I get the gist of it, but I really don't have a very clear understanding of what that means.
Symbiotic relationship is one does not exist without the other. And understanding that. So in nature, it could be seriously on the whale, there's fish that attend to it. And it does not exist without the whale, but the whale also needs the organism for it to stay healthy and work together. That's what symbiosis to me is, that combination of, for me, that humanness that I came to learn from and help me along with that spiritual piece of it.
Thank you. That really clarifies, because I recognize that I'm not choosing to walk into realities. I just do, and I can see now how symbiotic, or however the word is said.
Yes, that's right.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I use the term as a way of describing the fundamental relationship that needs to exist between both in order for each to be there. And so it's the symbiotic relationship, meaning that I cannot exist without my spirit and I cannot exist without my human. And so they are working and playing together in that experience of a shared experience. And so that shared experience is a symbiotic experience.
Yeah. And I like that too, Daniel, that it's about also the experience becomes symbiotic.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding is experiences of the past, I now sometimes in meditation revisit and understand what was going on in that symbiosis that I didn't then. And that allows me to repair some of the misaligned thinking I had around a situation or around something that was happening. Because the more I understand that, the more I then also understand, my thought pattern was the issue, not the actual incident. So it's a really interesting concept as it happens, because I do not exist without the other piece of it. So
I love what you bring up with regards to a misunderstanding of an experience. And I'm again putting words into what you said, but
yeah, no, that's exactly, yeah.
There's a case study that I have written up on my website of someone that I worked with in a past life regression that had one of the most powerful transformations as she realized that her past choices were driven by love and courage and not abandonment. And she had lived many lives with this energy of feeling abandonment. And it was in going back to the original source of that experience for her to relive a life where she was mauled by a lion and her family abandoned her, for her to recognize that her family didn't abandon her. She sacrificed herself to protect her family. And this was something that she chose. It was something that she did. And all of a sudden, she steps into this powerful experience of courage and love, as opposed to feeling of abandonment and betrayal and being defensive around her family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that beautiful understanding. And this is what I thought of as soon as you talked about how we innocently interpret things that happen to us because of the understanding we have in that moment. And that interpretation then affects us. And when we can look back at the innocence of the choices that we've made in the past that have led into a belief or into an idea or a perspective, all of a sudden we can shed light on it in a different way that gives us a different perspective to that situation, which therefore leads to what people would refer to as a healing. And I love that. I love that idea.
I do too.
I had something pretty powerful happen in November. And let me preface it by saying today I went and bought a dress. Now, if you knew me at all, you would know how totally, totally out of the box that is for me. I am like, I declare that I am a tomboy, right? However, this last couple of months, I've been doing some really interesting work, and this memory kept popping up from my childhood, and it was about me spraining my ankle. And I wanted to be given love and support and healing from my parents, and they ignored me. And I didn't know why that was happening, why that had happened when I was 12 years old. But what had happened is that they could already see that I was quite tough. I was quite capable of handling whatever. And so they were like, "Oh, you can handle this. You're fine, et cetera, et cetera." But in that moment, when they didn't pay attention to me in the way that I had hoped that they would, by babying me and offering me help, in that moment, I dropped the feminine part of myself. I literally dropped that feminine side of myself. And that was when I was 12. I am 59 now. 47 years later, I claimed her back in November. And today I bought a dress. And that's so unusual. So I can relate to what you guys are both saying here in a huge way. But it takes something just that simple to totally change. Like, I just lived the past 47 years of my life in a masculine energy on purpose, because that's how they thought I should be, or that's my perception of what I thought they wanted me to be. That's what I should say. Yeah, powerful.
You know, Sandra and I had, because we're both lifelong learners and we've become really good friends, we decided to do a book together. And for both of us, that book kind of spoke to this, because one of the things it taught both of us was what we call the ego is really the pattern brain that helps us in this human walk look at patterns. And sometimes, just like when you're little, you look at a pattern incorrectly. The pattern isn't and that's what you were talking about, Daniel. I looked at something and made it a pattern about abandonment, or a pattern about maleness, or mine a pattern about that there's a suffering that is all part of a spiritual life, that I just can honestly say to myself very gently, oh no, let's look for a different pattern. And it was a woman who wrote a book named Jill Bolte Taylor about a stroke she had, and she lost that part of her brain, that right part of her brain. And what she came to appreciate is her human body's needs. And therefore, because she lived on the spiritual side, she was able to reteach her human body how to let go of some of those patterns. But she needed the patterns in order to keep going on in her life. It was a fascinating book.
It was, and you know, it was what to me, and when I pointed this out to Kitty, she had heard it as well. I've got the written and the audio. I believe she's got the audio, and
I have both too. Yeah.
yeah. So we're listening to it, and as we're listening to it, you can hear her voice. Like she's just such a she's orated the book herself. She's spoken the book herself, and that first whole part of the book, it's so incredible because she's soft, she's you can just feel that she's like in this learning mode, and she's like, oh, whatever this is going to be, you know, I'm not going to worry about that, I'm just going to do this, and she's just floating along. And then you can feel when she's gained the energy back in the side that's had the stroke, because she all of a sudden becomes that scientific analytical voice. Like it's just fascinating to hear the difference in the both halves of the books and how we react to that, to strokes.
By the way, she was a neuroscientist, this stroke. And so she already had a science background. So she already knew about how the brain worked. And it was, now she was from the spiritual side, teaching us how she could bring it back online with the spirit. Even though her voice changed, it, her focus was completely different in her life. It took her 8 years. And she said she came back so she could talk about this journey. So it was a fascinating book. Yeah.
So what's the name of that book again?
Oh,
My Stroke of Insight.
My Stroke of Insight. Sitting right here. I kind of travel with it.
And the author is
Jill Bolte-Taylor.
Jill Bolte-Taylor.
Beautiful.
Incredible.
And if you actually look at, Google it for, she has TED Talks, and they're where she talks about this. So if you don't want to read the whole book, you'll still get a lot of it from her TED Talk. She's 62 now, and she had that stroke at 37. So she does have space over time about what's happened in her life and how she's taken that work forward. So
there's so much different information in there, and since we're kind of, I don't know if we're getting off topic or we're staying on topic. The part that I really clued in on, and I kind of bring to the people that I work with, and I recognize from my own journey, is the fact that she said that when we have an event happen and we're in the emotion of it, technically that emotion only lasts 90 seconds.
90 seconds.
90 seconds. Yet, if you think back, how long are we holding on to the emotion of some event? Decades, right? But in reality, go ahead, Kitty. You explained it so much better than I.
Because what we've done then is taken the emotion and assigned it to a pattern. And so when anything evokes that emotion, we pull that pattern out. And so what she says, if you can stop your mind for a minute, feel it for 90 seconds. That's not long. Not even call the emotion, just feel where it is in your body. Then you have the ability to assign it a new pattern. So fear can be a release. Sadness can be you can literally create a new pattern. It was both Sandra and I, and I do think that that's part of when I look at channeling for myself. One of the things that had become was a block I could feel at times is I'd be getting information and then I'd start questioning it. And we hear that across all platforms. Yeah. How do I know what's real and what's not? One of the things this book provided me is, do I have an emotion connected to this? Let me feel the emotion. And sometimes the message stays or it becomes clearer. Because, I'm a water sign, so there's a lot of emotion anyway. I've always trusted that voice to begin with, but now when I'm feeling questioning it, I stop back just to feel whatever the emotion is. It's about questioning it. Is it not feeling adequate? I don't even, but just feel it for a minute, and it often moves it away. It's fascinating tool.
So my take on the exact same thing, and how I, what's the word that I want to use? How I describe it is something that Kitty said, the old habits, right? When we're doing something and we recognize that we're doing something that's an old habit, this is something that we keep doing, it's breaking that old habit, stopping that old habit and starting a new one, in essence, is what we're being asked to do. So when we swing back around to this channeling, right? I've said that I'm stepping into the energy of moving past the human concept. Well, it is my habit, and probably everybody who does this, it's our habit to look for something that we recognize as a human being when we are channeling. We're looking for, oh, that's my so and so coming in, or that's that red wagon that I remember doing this with. That we get caught in that habit. And so what I'm doing is I recognize that I'm doing that. I'm looking for something, and I stop myself in that moment. Excuse me. And I let myself expand to see what else wants to come through instead of my human concept of what needs to come through.
Yeah, it is, because that's the question you will hear over and over. What do I do when I start to feel unsure or I'm trying to do something? And I heard it from many speakers, people, because there's a whole group of people, and it's not just a matter of, oh, I have to trust it. It is a matter of whatever you can go into your toolkit to do. For me, stop for a minute and feel if there's an emotion that's there. And it's not that the emotion isn't telling me something, but breaking it from another pattern I'm pulling forward, just like Sandra said. It's a habit, it's a pattern, and it has gotten clearer and clearer. It just comes out of my mouth and I'll say it. And it's a hard, I think it's one of the biggest challenges of channeling is if you find yourself feeling, and Daniel, you can speak to this because you channel all the time too. That feeling of, is this going to be real? Is this going to be enough? And then I am getting to the spot where it's always enough. What I get is what I get. And, but that's a big movement for me. Over this time.
There's so much that's been shared that I would love to kind of touch into. Let me begin with talking about, for me, what Kitty and Sandra have been describing is a way of understanding the mechanism behind how things work. And I talk about this all the time. This is a big part of the Three Principles conversation, which is around understanding the three elements that are at play that make it possible for us to even experience existence. And in understanding how things work, it gives us a perspective that makes it easier for us to navigate through life, because we start to see the inner workings of how our mind works, how our thought patterns work, how our emotions work, how we interpret things, how we, When we have that fundamental understanding of the mechanism behind life, it makes it easier to navigate through life. And so in whatever way that makes sense for you, clearly, this book written by this woman has been very profound for Sandra and Kitty. I have led to a similar kind of conversation through the Three Principles, where we talk about the mechanism. At least that's the way that I talk about it. I think that that's really helpful for a lot of people to understand, to kind of look behind the scenes of the movie that we're living. Let's look at the director and the film crew and the script and all of the different elements that are at play behind the movie that make the movie possible, so that we can have a better appreciation of the movie itself, and so that we can navigate through the movie with more clarity of the different elements that are at play.
And to put that into maybe another layman's terms as well, the patterns and habits are the expectations, the limiting beliefs, the triggers, the traumatic events, right?
And as you said, Daniel, they came from lifetimes.
Yeah.
Some handed via our DNA. We are finding more and more as our science is closing some of that gap. That many of us believe, but the actual physical working, like you're behind it, and so it is a mechanism. It is whatever tools you use that to kind of pull it apart, so that when you examine your own patterns, you start to figure out, and it releases so much. That's the part that amazed me. How much freer, sometimes when I sit back where I was 3 years ago and try to not try, put myself in the space of where I was, I can feel it again in all these different parts of my body that no longer exist. It's just not there. It's almost hard to be able to do it because we've changed so much of it. So it's one of the things I've learned recently is for me, one of the reasons I use the stars, it's a structure, but it's the responsibility that I kind of signed up for to come now. And when I looked at what tools I needed, and rather than, I think at one time I had a lot of, it was a why not? Why don't I? Why? But now the whys are, why do I want to do this? Because these are the things I want to achieve in my life. I've even switched my word why, as opposed to asking the universe to explain. I've now asked, why would you like me to do this? And I get more of the energy of what it is, where I'm going. And it's so, I don't even really know how to explain this. My whys have changed, you know? Yeah, they've just changed.
I can feel the power of that. I feel a lot of power in that.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes words are very limiting. And when you're trying to express what the difference is. But I know I'm not the same person who sat there 10 years ago. And yet I embrace that person because she did a lot of work. I'm almost going to cry. She did an amazing amount of work to get here. You know, thank you. Thank you for trying to figure out the ego or your human mind. Thank you for living in it so you can understand it. Thank you. You know, and that's the part. One of the things that I will hear people say, oh, your egoic mind, and there's a villainization of it, and it's not. It's a beautiful tool that you maintain and you work with and you look at. And if it gives you a message that doesn't resonate with you, it's because it wants you to look at it and then teach it. No, this isn't the pattern we're going for. You know, it's like embracing all of the pieces of you. So that's, for me, what I'm really working on.
Finding balance.
Finding that balance, yes.
I love what you bring up about how the questions that we are asking change the more that we understand. And the way that it was described to me is the difference between looking at engineering versus physics. So engineering is kind of looking at, how do I do this and how do I do that? Physics is looking at, how does this work? What are the elements? What are the fundamental principles that are working in order for something to happen? And engineering is looking at the things that are happening. How do you create a building within the structure of physics so that the building doesn't fall down when wind hits it or when the earth shakes? Whereas physics is looking at, okay, the earth shakes because of, and the shaking causes this, and the wind has a force, and that force can be measured. And so it's kind of giving you a different perspective on the building. You can either look at it from an engineering standpoint or a physics standpoint. And the more that we understand the physics, the better we understand the engineering.
Wow. I love that.
Me too.
Yeah.
And we can focus on the engineering all we want, but if we don't pay attention to the physics behind it, we're innocently going to make mistakes. And it's innocent because we don't know better. The level of our understanding of the physics is going to allow us to create a structure based on that level of understanding of physics. And as we deepen that understanding of physics, we can build better structures. We can build more expansive structures because our understanding of the physics behind it has expanded. And so that for me is as we evolve in our spiritual understanding and understanding that symbiotic relationship between our human and our spirit, it allows us to have that that conversation at a different level, which allows us to build better structures in the human form, because we have that foundational understanding of the physics behind the structures.
And physics without the engineering wouldn't exist, couldn't work either.
Exactly.
Because you have to be able to bring it into this consciousness. Recently, I've been participating in a few conversations about, we have spirit and we have this spiritual realm, and there are energies of spirit that have never been in the physical form. And so there is also an education that is happening for the spiritual end of some of what we bring, our guides that come through, because they are also looking for ways that they evolve, and there's a spiritual piece of it. It's that duality we live in, you know, and it's an interesting idea. I had never thought about the fact that there are spirits and guides that come and work with us that have never had a physical entity. And at times they're literally asking us, well, what does that feel? Just to get an understanding of what is going on. And so I understand sometimes feeling like, aren't you getting this? So, you know.
Isn't it interesting that I'm asking them, what does it feel like right now? Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm choosing to do. I'm asking them, how does that feel? What does that look like? Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
So it's very interesting because recently I've been very aware of, so what are you going to do with that? And it isn't like a mother saying, so what are you going to do next, with an idea in her head? It's so what is that? You know, and I'm like, come join me. You want to join the feeling? Jump right in. So, you know, it's an interesting, because I've always kind of looked at the paradox from one side, me talking, and now I'm thinking, okay, I'm asking you to come so I can talk to you, and I can tell you what this experience is, especially because we do have a lot of other realms out there, and it's an evolution for all of us. So there is a piece of that. So it's a fascinating journey, isn't it?
It is.
And it's fun. It's fun to find people to talk to about it, because other people at times will look at you like, what do you want on your sandwich? You know. And
to Sandra's earlier point, there is no topic to be on, so we are never going to be off topic, just so you know. There is no topic. It is just a flow of consciousness.
Fair enough.
But, you know, Kitty, you mentioned something which made me think of a conversation that I had with one of the people that I'm working with right now, which is this idea of really appreciating our humanity, appreciating what it means to be in a human form. Because a lot of us, when we play in the spiritual world, and I'm generalizing this, and I apologize if the generalization doesn't do it justice, but just for simplicity, I'm going to generalize. A lot of us, when we play in the spiritual world, it's common for people to not see the value of what it means to be human, because being spirit is so amazing. Connecting with spirit at that level is so intoxicating. And I just want to go back, because what I do here is meaningless, or it's pointless, or it doesn't matter because someone else can do what I'm doing. And that whole kind of idea for me is missing the point of spirituality. For me, becoming spiritual is so that I can be human even better, is so that I can take my humanity to a different level. It's not about me wanting to go back into spiritual form and connecting with spiritual energy and resonating in those higher states, because it's so much fun to play up there. And, oh, you know, coming back into this whole three-dimensional world is so horrible. And it's not about that for me at all. For me, it's about the more that I'm able to explore and expand my awareness into the spiritual understanding of my existence, the better I'm able to take my human into other areas and to explore from that perspective.
The energy of this is, it's so interesting, because when I hear you say humanity, I take it well past the Daniel. I take it to the humanity. And I myself choose to walk in 5D rather than 3D. And by walking in 5D, what I mean is I choose to step into the energy that today is a magical day. Every day I wake up and that. And I love what you said as well about how it's intoxicating to step into meditation or go into shamanic journeys or channel and all of these things. And you can really get caught up in that. But I'm a way shower. So I don't want to say I'm designed to come back into this existence, but I'm here to show others how to achieve the same existence of walking in 5D and being tapped into all that there is in a magical way as well. I mean, I feel that I'm encompassing humanity and living life, because I mean, I love my mountain biking. I love being human, man. I love climbing up mountains and looking at this. I love swimming in oceans. But I love coming here and, having a conversation Kitty said that I wanted her to make sure she was claiming that storyteller astrologer. Well, she made sure that I'm claiming the galactic shaman, because that's who I am. I'm so tapped into the stars and everything there. I have no idea, even it's not even the tip of the iceberg yet, I'm a Q-tip, really. But I want to be able to access that and be in this world sharing that. I love what you said, Daniel.
Yeah, and I'm right. It's about the evolution of and I'm a bridge. I know that is, and I'm still exploring what that means. It's about all of us crossing that bridge, all of us, even at the physical level, evolving to this. And what an exciting time to be around to do this. And, it is the meditation and getting, that's the forever. That always is awaiting. It's part of where I've gone, where I'm going to come back to. And so what I've really, when you were speaking, both of you, I realized I'm just excited to be alive now. I don't think I wasn't excited, but I don't think I was aware. And so I'm 62 and I think, well, I'd like to live to at least 92, but that's only 30 more years, and I know at 32, I did not think, oh, well, in 30, but I'm excited about it. It's a journey now. And part of what I really want when I am at the end of those years is to turn around again and felt wonderful about my humanness, that I lived the most human spiritual life in combination, that I figured out what my journey was. And so, but that's a big shift for me. I don't think I thought ahead or thought about, a lot of us think about what we want to accomplish, but I also am thinking about what I want to feel, all of the human things, like the goals of my humanness too, that I would like to achieve. So
I remember once a friend of mine being almost hysterically upset about turning 40. And when I reached 55, I was so excited because there's 55. That's a transformation number, man. So yeah, it's all mindset. So much mindset involved here.
But it's teaching the mind how it wants to be set. And what I feel like is I'm back aligned to what I always talked about in my bus stop conversation before I came. This is where, and that's really quite exciting, because I know forever is waiting. And I've been there before and I'll be there again. So this opportunity is just what it is. It's an opportunity.
And so I just want to bring this up for people that are listening to this conversation who are joining us live. Feel free to ask questions and interact with us. The three of us can go into these conversations on our own without any assistance. But for those of you that are joining us live, feel free to ask questions or participate in any way you want. So one thing that I wanted to kind of bring up, and this is kind of switching topics a little bit. Kitty, earlier you mentioned the way in which the term ego is used in a negative way by many. I believe I've shared this with both of you in the past, but I tend to talk about my human experience as opposed to looking at it from, oh, that's my ego. Partly because I don't like the association that I've attached to the word ego because of all of the things that are out there. Yeah. And I started noticing that what I would label as, oh, that's my ego, that's the way that I would describe my human side, my human understanding, my physical looking for patterns and looking for ways to relate to this world. And so I started associating that more with my human experience and less with this whole idea of ego.
Just so you know, Daniel, I have borrowed that since you've told me. So awesome. That so resonated with me because there was a judgment for me and a lot of people around the word ego.
So. Yeah. Me too. But what I wanted to bring up is using the word ego with a positive connotation. Our spirit also has an ego. We have a spiritual ego. We have our higher self has a perception of self. It has its own preferences, its interests, its likes and dislikes, its direction, its characteristic, its personality. And so our higher self is also living within a space of a perceived identity. And I just want to bring that up because our human has a perceived identity as well. And that's what we're playing with a lot of times when we're, working with healing and we're working with, traumas, is we're playing with the perception of the human and the way in which the human has interacted and interpreted things to create patterns to then simplify its way of navigating in life more safely. And I love the idea of remembering that my human self is a combination of my human personality and my spirit personality coming together to form Daniel. And so what I understand and perceive of myself is, again, using the word, the symbiotic relationship between my spiritual personality and the personality of this body. And a lot of times we go through life thinking that the personality we have is of this body. But it isn't. Our personality is formed by the relationship between the body and our spirit as it relates with and interacts with this body. This is who we understand ourselves to be in this form. And a lot of times we think about, oh, this is my human, but it's not. This is your human and spirit working together to create your experience of awareness within this human form. And so for me, it's that reminder of our humanity is a spiritual experience. It is a spiritual experience. And a lot of times we forget that because we get so caught up in the human process, the human form, the human suffering, the human healing, the need for healing, all of these things get kind of brought up. But keep in mind that your humanity is a spiritual journey.
It's one you chose. It's that dynamic conversation throughout your life. And I think that that's a beautiful way. I still have this other spiritual, I wish I could figure out another word for the word ego because I have my own attachment to it and I know it's mine, but that spiritual being and my human being in constant divinity conversation. And as I've learned to embrace the human mind that is looking for patterns, my spiritual self is teaching a lot of the patterns and learning the patterns. That's why I've been fascinated with this idea about the energies that have not taken a human form are also learning. This is part of this conversation that's happening. So it's a bigger conversation energetically. So simplistically, I'm quite sure. So,
The way that I talk about it and the way that I refer to it myself, if this is helpful for you, is individualized self, a perception of individualized self. And so as I perceive myself as being separate from God, as I perceive myself as being separate from source, because I have a distinct characteristic and personality, which is defined by my energy field because of that. So this is a perception of my individualized self. And I am an individualized self because there's characteristics that source wants to explore and wants to play with. Like, what can I create if I was to be this person? Well, let me create that person. Let's see what I create. And so it created my higher self. And then my higher self is saying, well, what could I create and what could I experience if I create Daniel? Well, let's create Daniel in this way, because Daniel has characteristics and personalities and attitudes and perceptions which either I want to explore or I lack as a spiritual identity. And so let me explore what it means to be a tomboy, because as a spirit form, I've never really been that comfortable with being a tomboy. So let me create a lifetime, let me create a life force that is a tomboy so that I can experience that and learn from that as a soul. And so for me, that whole idea of playing with identity and personality is a lot of fun. And for me, the way that I describe my human self, my human ego is my human experience. And the way that I describe my spiritual ego is as a perception of individuality, a perception of individualized self.
I like that. It's a description of the conversation that's always happening, and what I talk about in astrology is you had a conversation before you came about what lessons, what tools, that you had an idea of ideas of what your humanness was to learn. And what I have attracted to myself, losing a mother young, was all part of that journey. So those lessons that I perceived, even in that spiritual individual self, I'm quite sure at the end of it, I'll say, did I learn them? Or did I learn that wasn't something I needed? I mean, there is a piece of that too. I truly believe when you get to the end of this piece of the journey, you get a little review, like, and, I send ahead gratitude for the review. So.
I always lovingly and laughingly appreciate my guides for their patience with my with the things that I do.
Yeah.
So one thing that I wanted to mention, which I think is related to this, is I had a dream a little while ago where I was given the metaphor of, and I don't know how true this is. Like, I don't know if this is actually how it happens, but this is what I dreamt, which I thought was really helpful in my own view of who we are and how we are made up. Is I had this metaphor where it was decided, okay, my higher self has given me the name of Andromeda as a reference point. And so source, whatever and whoever is source is, decided that they wanted to create Andromeda. And so with Andromeda, they said, okay, well, let's take some energy from Michael, Archangel Michael. Let's take some energy from Lucifer. Let's take some energy from Ariel. And so they, depending on the percentages of energies that are utilized from the different energies that exist, they created a personality. And so for me, when I met Lucifer, I felt an instant recognition. And I know that many people kind of think of Lucifer as the devil and all of different things. Lucifer is not that perception. In fact, Lucifer, I'm told by Lucifer that Lucifer works alongside Michael all the time, and oftentimes when people ask for Michael's help, Lucifer is by his side, helping in many different ways behind the scenes. But it was shortly after I met Lucifer in a channel session with friends of mine where I felt an affinity to that energy, and it felt like it was a part of me. It felt like familiar to me. And it was shortly after that that I had that dream where it was kind of like, well, of course it felt familiar because I have his energy in me as part of my personality. And so it's an interesting kind of way to kind of think about our personalities are made up of energies that in different percentages will create different interests, different characteristics. And it's a game to kind of say, well, let's play with this energy. We want Andromeda because Andromeda, is can play in a certain space. Well, let's create Andromeda's personality so that we can support that space. And what would we do to create that? Well, let's take a little bit here. Let's take a little bit here. Knowing that it's an evolution. But that was kind of a really nice metaphor for me to understand, again, how we are formed, how our personalities are created from an energetic standpoint, was this idea of kind of like a recipe. It's like, and so I just wanted to share that.
Well, if we go back to the extraterrestrials, etc., that is in essence what happened, but just using different, like if it was angels, it was angels. If it was extraterrestrials, it was extraterrestrials. I mean, the concept is essentially the same. Yeah.
Well, and if you follow, and then you follow the science that's starting to talk about that. I follow a gentleman named Nassim Harem, who is a spiritual quantum physicist, and he talks about things like our energy is left in space, not time, space-time, space, and that it's always rearranging, whether it's angelic, whether it's galactic, and we're able in this persona, because my persona is called Azure, Azure, and she's behind me always. That's my higher self, that persona of me. And we leave these imprints in space, and it makes perfect sense to me, Daniel, that we collect some of it from everywhere as we go through. And which is why when they talk about time, I mean, I've had a lot of things recently where I'm like, that was not there before. So this is just a different time that's in parallel. Recently, it was a pole. I walked by this same spot every morning, and all of a sudden there's a pole. And I said something to my husband. He goes, no, that's always been there. I'm like, no, it hasn't. And I know it hasn't because I walked the dogs by it. And I thought,
oh my God, that is fascinating.
Yeah, it's something simple, but because I had shifted something and I had really felt it the day before, I'm like, well, thank you for the reassurance, because there's a pole where there wasn't a pole before. There's no way for 4 weeks I walked by this pole and didn't notice it. It's in a space this big, but it doesn't mean when it shifts that all the players around you have also received the concept. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
And he's very fascinating to me because he's actually measuring the physics of it, like the idea of tunneling things. Two things happen at the same time. That would be two energies confer with other people. You're in touch with all of them. So makes sense to me. I've
actually had this happen too. I've had this happen too, where there's definitely not been something. And when I say something to my husband, he's like, yeah, that's always been there. And it's like, yeah, no, it hasn't. There's no way it's always been there, kind of thing. Yeah.
My mother is tapping into different timelines, and she doesn't know that she is. So I'll be watching a show or a movie and she'll say, you've seen that already. I'm like, no, I never even knew this movie existed. No, but you've seen it already, because I know you've seen it, because I recognize scenes from it. And I'm like, Mom, trust me. I didn't even know this movie existed 10 minutes ago. So I couldn't have seen it. and this started happening so often to her that she started freaking out. And I keep on reassuring her and telling her that, I asked my spirit friends, what is happening? And what they told me is that she's tapping into different timelines. And so she's getting these incredible aspects of deja vu where she feels like this has already happened.
And it may have happened in a different time, in a different parallel set of energy.
Yeah.
And I have quite a few friends who are mediums, and they often will tap into people with a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's who are still walking around and talking. Their bodies are still here, but because they're tapping into alternate states of energy, they're talking to mediums, telling them stuff, like and they still are alive. So, I mean, it makes sense that we tap into just what you're saying. I have these different energies from these different aspects of where I've been in contact with others. I mean, I have people in my life where I think, I want to keep knowing you in other places, like whether it's recognition or putting an order in for the next time around, I don't know, but it's definitely happened. So I love your explanation of that, because it makes perfect sense to me following him. How he talks about it's space memory. It's not time. It's that we leave in this vast, right now, the Earth itself is starting to encounter, it started in 2020, just a little bit, this energy that only comes around every 12,000 years. It makes a cycle for as much as they can tell. And geologists are studying it and called the area of the physical universe. This is not the 5D universe. This is called the Great Attractor, because it seems things are all traveling towards it. And the Earth is now starting to align with it. So, we have no idea what that is. So cool. So it's very interesting. I love your explanation, though.
There was something that has been rattling in my head for quite some time. One of my spirit friends, again, through my practice group, made a comment to us that I found really fascinating to play with. And what he talked about was the fact that we don't actually move like we perceive that we do. We're more stationary than we are. And so I keep on thinking, while I'm driving to the store, I'm thinking, am I actually driving to the store, or am I just in one place and the things are and I'm moving things through me so that it looks like I'm moving? And when I'm walking on the ground, am I actually moving across the ground, or am I just in one space and I'm moving the ground beneath my feet? and so it's a fun kind of play of again, this whole kind of metaphysical and physics and all of that whole idea of our perception of reality isn't really what's actually happening. And these are all just invitations. I love the idea that you're walking down a street and all of a sudden there's something there that was never there before, and your husband says that, oh yeah, that's always been there. Now, a lot of people would kind of be like, well, maybe I'm imagining things, or maybe there's something wrong with me. Chances are high that it isn't, that you're perceiving something that shifted, and for whatever the reason, you're aware of that shift, whereas others around you aren't.
Right.
I love that idea.
It also shows that there's a possibility that we're definitely walking in many parallels at once. Yeah, because if her husband is seeing it and she hasn't been, and yet they're still together, kind of thing, that's just different parallels.
We had little stories where the one that stood out was this summer was, it's a funny thing to say, but it was a toothbrush. And we thought we left it. We were going between where we were and another house. And both of us, and he said, I'm really sure it was in this bag. We both went through the bag. Wasn't there. that evening I hear, go look in the bag, open it up. And I said, Dave, he goes, that was not there. That was not there. You know, I'm like,
Yep.
like,
I purchased
yeah.
a external hard drive to put my photographs on from all my trips. I brought it home. It was in this room and it has completely disappeared. So I'm just waiting for that dimension, that realm, that parallel to come back for it to be sitting right here on my desk.
With pictures, and you can look at the pictures of where you've traveled.
Exactly.
That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
You remind me of, I mean, when I was a kid, my brother and I used to play role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and different games. And so we had all the different die, like 8-sided die, 20-sided die, and we had different colors. And for those of you that are familiar with it, then you know what I'm talking about. And for those of you that don't, when people play these games, you end up buying the die that you like. And so I had 2 green and 1 red of 20-sided die that was transparent. And I know that I had 2 green and 1 red. My brother and I were in Guatemala and we were playing together. And at some point I found that there were 2 red in my collection of die. And I was like, where did this come from? Now, my brother didn't have that mark or that brand or that type of die. It's not like he had it and all of a sudden it was mine. We were in Guatemala, in our house in Guatemala, completely devoid and separate from any role-playing store or place where we could have purchased this item. And all of a sudden I had 2. 2 years later, in Guatemala, playing with my brother, it disappeared. And I went back to having 2 green and 1 red.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, this was definitely real. It was a real experience. And it would have been physically impossible for that die to have been purchased or brought in from somebody else. Or there's no logical explanation for that to have appeared into my collection of die. Because I never purchased 2 red. I purchased 2 green and 1 red. And so we are exposed to all different kinds of stuff that is just so much fun to play with when we have an eye for it and we kind of look for, ooh, this is interesting, this is different.
I just had one today. I started this little part-time job and they gave me my locker combination. It's my high school locker combination.
Wow.
That's
4,
funny.
10, 24. And she looked at me and she said, what's, I said, this was my, 4 might have been 6, but then I have a weird thing with numbers. And all of a sudden I went, no, because I could see myself turning it.
That's funny.
And I'm like, okay, thank you, Spirit.
So just to kind of say, Sandra, I know that you need to run off really soon. So before you run off, thank you again so much for coming to play. Always a lot of fun to have conversations with you and to have you join. I'm looking forward to having you be part of season 4. Very excited for that. Kitty, are you good to kind of go a few more minutes, or do you
Sure,
need to
a few
run
more
off? Yeah?
minutes, yeah.
Okay. So
Thank you.
Sandra, we say farewell for now. Lots of love to you, and we will definitely speak soon.
Yeah, this has been a hoot as usual. So
yeah,
enjoy.
A lot of fun. Thank you.
Bye.
So Kitty, where would you like to go now?
I don't know. Let me think. I'm hearing to the stars.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, to the stars. I'm very fascinated actually by this whole new energy, great attractor. This particular, after yesterday's full moon, this particular couple weeks is a very creative time that we're stepping into of long-term planning, getting ready for some long-term. And what's very interesting, you know, years ago, as I was a teacher, I am a teacher. For children, little children, I designed a unit called Seasons of Light. because there was a lot of push to not have information. It wasn't just about Christmas, but we started studying all of these across cultures that celebrate the light, but celebrated in different ways. Some were newer, some were old, they used candles. So in this particular month, which is always about the shifting of light, one part of the world, it gets longer, one part of the world, it gets shorter. Neptune, the planet of light, of spirit, is hugely present in the stars right now. It's in conversations. It's been with something called retrograde before, which is basically internally, and it went direct on the 3rd. And I have never really experienced how much it is showing up. And it's an outer planet, so it is closer to that great attractor. And it's kind of our what's the word I want? Archetype for what is beyond our understanding, our higher learning, what is hidden. It's actually the house of the hidden coming to the conscious.
From a logistical description, what does it mean when a planet is in retrograde?
So planets move counterclockwise on the zodiac wheel, in the sky, really. Or as you would say, maybe we're holding still. And instead of going around us this way, they're going around us this way. But okay.
Let's just simplify the matter and let's just kind of go with the perception.
Yeah, right. Because boy, my mind started going like just trying to, wrap my brain around that. And one of the things I have certainly learned is if I'm not wrapping my brain around it, it's because there is a limitation at either from where I'm standing or where I'm accessing. And I can joyfully now say, you'll get it to me when I'm ready, right? So planets move counterclockwise. And when a planet goes retrograde, it's not, it moves clockwise. In other words, the rest of the world moves clockwise. That's in nature. Planets, the energy moves counterclockwise. And so what it really is doing is slowing down and pausing, and we're continuing. So we're kind of following along with it. That's how it starts to move the same way we do. And the belief in astrology is that when it's retrograde, instead of it coming externally to us, it's an internal activation. So when Neptune's been retrograde, it's been about the channels we are internally in called the below the horizon, the night, it is shadow, but it's also shadow and internal, like what we can't see, that piece of it. Now, this is the planet of what we can't see. This is the planet in the 12th house of what is secret or the unconscious to conscious. Is Neptune. And so when it goes direct again, it starts to move in its, so what I've been told by my guides is it's having more of a conversation internally with you versus I'm going to meditate and ask something to be shown me. It's sure. Going to be shown, it's going to, and interestingly enough, almost all planets within a year, 15 months will go retrograde at some point, except Mars. Mars, our planet of will, the first planet, it's almost over 2 years before it will. And we happen to be in a rare Mars retrograde right now, which is our will is internal. Something is bubbling up in us to start something.
Is there something that happens physically to the planets in their orbits that tell us that it's in retrograde, or is it, how does one know that it's in retrograde?
It's in its positions where it's measured in the sky. Mercury goes X amount and they're able to, it's calculated. Okay. It's geometry. That's the best way to explain it. It's just geometry. And we have a season in the 12 months, 15 months where a lot of things go retrograde at the same time. Basically, they slow or whatever. Because the geometry is, most people don't know this, but Pluto and Uranus actually switch places in their cycles because one's more of an elliptical orbit. Mm-hmm. And so there are periods of time, and it's years, where Neptune, where Neptune is closer to the Earth, and then there are times where Pluto is closer to the Earth.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, because that geometry is different in the trajectory. So,
Right.
but Neptune itself, which is the planet, so we've got this in astronomy, we have this great attractor that the Earth is lining up with. And in astrology, we have Neptune, which has come direct, the planet of uncovering. So we have a great attractor of uncovering happening this month. Pretty exciting. I'm kind of like very curious. And meanwhile, the rest of the planets are signaling this is a time for long-term planning. This is a time for creativeness. This is a great energy of opening of that right now. So, and it's in this season of light, the season where a good portion of the world stops to celebrate and look at mankind. Now, this is not one of the years where we have Diwali, Ramadan, and things all lined up, Hanukkah, many of the holidays, celebrations. There are some years where they're all within a very short period of time of each other. It depends on how the calendars are running. Like the Muslim calendar is a different calendar than ours. So Ramadan happens in different seasons for them, but that is the ultimate celebration of a day of prayer. And then at night, the lights, because they don't use the electricity, they use the oil lights and the lamps and simple foods, and it's very interesting.
I had a misperception, and still do, of the idea of planets being in retrograde. Because as I was doing some research on the Earth being the center of the universe versus the sun being the center of our solar system, as I was playing in that shift in understanding of our collective awareness, I learned about how the planets that are between us and the sun, because of the fact that we are the third, X number of planets out, visibly in the sky, these planets will look like they're moving in a different direction because of the way that they move around the sun and the way that we move around the sun. There's going to be a period in time when they physically look like they're moving backwards. And I thought that was retrograde.
Well, and there are people that will tell you that, but it's really more about the angle they form, their orbit. It is the same idea, but it's really more complicated in the math of it, the geometry of it.
Right. Because then you mentioned the planets that are farther out than the Earth, and I was like, wait, if that's the case, then my idea of retrograde doesn't work, because my idea only applies to the planets that are between us and the sun.
Right. And Earth in astrology isn't really mentioned. Very interesting, because the sun is the center. Because the sun is the sign of self, who we are and what travels around us. That's why the sun is assigned the light, who we are. And Earth doesn't have a house. Earth doesn't have a job. Earth kind of, it's from the perspective of how we use it. And of course, astronomy and astrology at one time were the same thing, and then they went their separate ways. Because, and of course, retrograde gets a bad rap anyway because of Mercury retrograde. But if we think of Mercury's planet of communication, and when Mercury goes retrograde, and some of us are born with retrograde planets, which is another whole piece of a chart. When Mercury goes retrograde, it's just about our internal communication, which is why technology goes, it's not moving in the same direction it once was, the actual planet, the energy, but it really is about stepping forth then to pause. Mercury retrogrades are actually gifts because they slow us down. The communication planet, it's not that it really goes backwards, it literally slows when it goes into retrograde. It changes its speed, its velocity. And how interesting as technology has developed, we've actually found a direct link that it screws up stuff. But it gives us an opportunity. And I think that's when we were talking about earlier today, that's a big opportunity of shift of consciousness. The dreaded Mercury retrograde isn't that isn't about communicating, but it's about using a level of discernment and slowing down, because we speed up. And without those slowdowns, do we receive what it is that we need? And
That's
so
a nice reminder.
It really is, and I'm born with Mercury retrograde. So I have that same need for balance then in communication, because it's like I'm waiting for the internal piece of it for me. And what I find technologically during Mercury retrograde is I don't have the issues, but other people do for me, around me. And that's all right, because I'm kind of used to that piece of it, the slowing down. So
yeah, it's a nice reminder.
Yeah,
and so
is.
I'm aware of the time. And I want to again thank you for coming in to play with me for this session. I look forward to working with you and playing with you again for season 4.
I would, and I'm going to be inviting you on again to be a guest, and we're starting up our educational program again too. I think that this is such a wonderful thing that you do with the channeling. It's taken channeling and our communication and it's stretching, and I've really enjoyed what I've been able to listen to and the couple I've been able to attend. So I thank you. So
it's been a lot of fun and an honor.
It has. All right. Take
So
care, Dan.
thank you again for being part of this. For those of you that are listening to the recording, again, this is only available to people that have contributed throughout the season. It's my way of giving something back to you for giving back to us. So it's just kind of a, you give to us and I want to give back to you in appreciation for that. So thank you for being part of this project. It's been a lot of fun as always. I look forward to next season, which is season 4. It'll start on February 2nd. And Kitty
Groundhog's
and Sandra,
Day.
yes, my mother's birthday actually as well.
All right.
So Sandra and Kitty are both going to be part of season 4. So look forward to them being there. Until then, I will leave you with being spirit, being human, and simply being from love.
Namaste.
Thank you for being part of this incredible experience. We hope that this session has inspired a new level of understanding within you, allowing you to expand more easily into the essence of your true self and become an even more powerful alchemist in your own life. We invite you to listen to the session again and again in order to go deeper each time and expand even more. Have it be via the replays or the unlimited access package. If you have enjoyed being part of this event, we invite you to tell your friends so that they can join us in the future. We are grateful that you are here, and we thank you for co-creating this experience with us. Until next time, we leave you with being spirit, being human, and simply being from love.